Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sonic Talk, episode 531, I believe it is this time. Yes, I believe so. Can't think of a nomenclature that 531, a famous model of anything. It's not like a 303 or an 808. Maybe there's be something from Roland or some other manufacturer in the future which will make this episode a classic by association. But hopefully it'll be an episode that's a classic anyway. This is the podcast that's to do with music technology, the kind of infrastructure around making music, recording music, performing music, software, synthesizers, all that kind of stuff, trade shows, anything you want to talk about or anything we need to talk about if there's no news on the actual week. I think there's a little bit of news this week, so we should be okay. I want to say thank you very much to iZotope for providing the prize. You can win a copy of Neutron 2, which is an excellent mix processing software, set of plugins, all sorts of useful doodads and knickknacks for just getting the most out of either individual tracks or on the two bus, however you want to run it. So let's get on to our guests. Actually should just say hello to the chatties in the chat room. They're the people on the YouTube chat room. Obviously, if you want to join us, you can subscribe to the channel and you'll get a notification every time we go live, and then you can get onto the chat room there, which is the YouTube chat room. Oh, we've also got a little IRC chat room. Sonicstate.com/live is where you can find all of that. So without further ado, let's get on to introducing our guests. Let's start with Mr. Rich Hilton, who's there in Connecticut, mostly on the road with Nile Rodgers and Chic, who seem to be playing a lot of banging gigs recently. You seem to have been kind of, what did you do Coachella and everybody's just gone, that's the best thing I've ever seen?
Well, we did Coachella, and if people said that, that would be very, very nice. We did Coachella 2 weekends, and it was wonderful, and felt great, and was just a beautiful gig. And that came at the end of about a month of touring through Australia and New Zealand and other areas of California.
Wow.
And now
not very geographically connected, those Australia, New Zealand, and other areas of California. So yeah.
Well, California, other areas besides Coachella.
Yeah, sure. Okay, got you.
Not tying New Zealand to California, obviously, but it was. You know what? Coming from New Zealand back to California wasn't as hard as going from New York to Australia, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, so what's that? It's a 20-hour flight from New York, is it?
To New Zealand? It's most of 6 to get to California, and then it's, I believe, another 15 after a short layover. So ultimately it ends up being 24 hours, and if you add in the 15, 16, whatever it is, time change, 14 now. I think it's 14 right now. But if you add in the time change, and you end up giving away a day, basically, that you get back when you sort of come back in terms
when you need to go to sleep. Wow.
Well, and that's another story as to how people deal with that. But
so
I feel good.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. I know it can be pretty exhausting, that kind of travel. I haven't done anything that long. I mean, NAMM is, half that effectively, but it's nothing like, I did do Australia once and it really just did me in. I remember, I've probably told the story many times, so I won't tell it again, but just coming back and being completely out of it and just not really know. And when I went there, really out of it for a couple of days. So, Rich, I was going to ask, actually, before we move on, your live setup, have you had anything new to it recently? I mean, obviously stuff's coming out all the time. I mean, I know, when you're going out and you need to hire backline and stuff, consistency is key, but sometimes, one upgrades and changes things. Anything rocking your world new in the live scenario for you at the moment?
For me, no. I wish I could tell you some exciting story about a new piece of gear that we've integrated that makes our world completely different. But I'm actually quite happy with the rig I use for the purpose it's for, and given the constraints, given the size of our crew and such, it doesn't make really any sense for me to work any other way. And the consistency is key, and I actually give up some things for the consistency and the reliability of those instruments that I use. And I actually love the way those keyboards feel. So
that's the Roland RD something or other, isn't it?
The Roland weighted action hammer throw type keyboards in varying incarnations, starting from the RD 700 line and moving through the RD 800 line, and now the RD 2000 line. And the keyboards themselves, the actual actions on the keyboards, are really agreeable to me, and that's really a large part of what's driving my using them, along with the reliability. and the sounds are great. You know, they're fine and everything, and I can get these sounds. The strings are actually tricky for Chic, but other than that, the sounds are pretty easy to get.
Yeah,
And
I can imagine because that
hardware is because we rent gear everywhere and we don't have a specific crew for keyboards. So unless I want to be the keyboard crew, I would need to make it easy at that end for the moment.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Should there come to be a crew, I would rethink it around the rig that I use here, which is sort of laptop based, and which would allow me to use a much wider variety of samples as the basis.
Yeah. Interesting. Jamie, Liddell. Hello, welcome again. This Jamie Liddell, of course, premium vocalist, looper, and producer, songwriter, based in Nashville. In his, I would say laboratory, but it's actually library. Have you got there's some more stuff on that? There's definitely some more stuff on one of those shelves, those black boxes.
Oh,
have you been filling it up?
Looking at those shelves, you know, there's actually quite. Hang on, I'll get out of the way of this. You see right behind this shoulder here. See that guy.
Yeah.
That's good. That's like a B&K old filter, massive thing.
Oh, is it that? Is it is it like the B&K Danish? Aren't they? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
That thing is crazy. Pure music concrete madness. And you know what? I have got. One thing I've been doing recently, which was good. I did a vocal for Rosie Lowe using this.
The hell is that?
Yes. $30. This is a
is it like for a cassette? Is it for a cassette mic? One of the older cassette microphones?
Reel-to-reel microphone.
Yeah.
Feeding straight into this.
Oh, wow.
The Boss Play Bus. Going straight into the Culture Vulture and then into the Publison Infernal Machine. Check that vocal chain out.
That is a unique one.
Badass. And then I can say arse. That's my English attempt to be American.
Yeah, that's
badass. And also, I got an amazing bit of gear through the post, which I thought was broken. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Vimeo auctions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Forest.
Yeah.
So anyway, like a fool, I started bidding on the Marshall Electronics time modulator 5002A.
I remember you saying that. And you got it.
And I won it, and it arrived. And I tried to plug it in, and it just didn't work. And I was like, oh, great. There I go. I spent so much money on the thing. Anyway, got to the bottom of it, and it works. So last night, the wife was looking at me confused, like, what is he doing? And I was modulating time.
You were modulating time and space.
I'm only modulating time. Don't worry. Everything's fine. So yeah, if anyone is after a box that is truly odd and amazing, and you can find one of those things and you don't pay too much money for it, then yeah, it's staggering. That box is bloody marvelous.
That was Hendrik. No, did we have this conversation last week? Because Marshall Time Modulator was
Ashes.
Okay.
That's David Bowie. Boom, boom, boom. That's that. Also, Darth Vader's voice. And Stevie used it in a few things, Songs to Kill Life. I think it might be that crazy ADT vocal effect that Stevie uses sometimes. I really hope it is. I'm sure it is, actually. And so you've got Darth Vader, David Bowie, Stevie Wonder, and that's a pretty nice little list.
A bargain at any price.
I'm going to be using. I'm going to make like samples. It's going to be amazing for samples. Anyway, I'm in a good mood.
Excellent. I'm really pleased to hear that.
Kind of lo-fi
that sounds
stuff.
Brilliant.
Look, I've got the Infernal Machine, the Prime Time, and the Time Modulator all to my right. I mean, that's it. Those are the greatest.
They're Prince machines, aren't they? The Prime Time and Infernal Machine. The greatest.
Incredible.
Okay, Gaz, what have you got? Come on then, it's show and tell time. I mean, you've got a fresh beard, we can see that. Gaz Williams, of course, professional bass player, musician, producer, and all those other things. And Sparrow lover, yeah, lover of birds, feathered kind.
Lover of all birds. I've had it a while. It's a Vermona Retroverb.
Oh yeah,
which is like a spring reverb with a
visible
LFO and a filter.
Is a spring just hanging out?
That would be good.
No, not on this one.
Cool.
No, yeah. No, but you can. There is a crash button, so you can trigger the spring by just pressing the crash button.
Is there a little hand inside that just hits it?
I'd like to think there is.
Elf, a spring elf.
But sparrow.
Yeah, I'll get them sparrows doing everything for me. But the what's quite cool is that I've the LFO can be triggered by a trigger input. So I've got a trigger input coming from the Beatstep Pro into it, and so I'm taking the DRM out and just running the DRM drum through the Retroverb, and then programming drum patterns, but programming patterns. So I've got I think drum voice 8, a gate coming out of the
that will
the Beatstep.
Deal with the
Firing.
reverb itself. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
What does the
And
LFO
then, so
do?
you can do so you can have
Filter.
the LFO either affect the VCA, so you can kind of do like kind of tremolo
That's
effects,
nice.
or the filter. Yeah.
Dude,
So
have you guys
it's just
gone
really
to
cool.
Ableton? Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a time
Yeah,
delay.
yeah.
I was just saying, like, for a similar effect, for those of you who don't have that capability but do have a spring, I highly recommend you just using LFOs in Ableton and putting your spring on an effects loop, and then just feeding the wet dry to the LFO mount, and then you've kind of got that effect.
Interesting.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's
The effects, the Max for Live kind of modulation possibilities in Live 10 are just tip top. They've corrected a lot of those things. Sorry, guys. I just suddenly thought, man,
yeah, no, it's
that's
good.
a great
it's good.
idea.
Yeah. It's one of them things as well. I'm just programming very, very simple beats in, putting a little bit of the probability that you can put in on the Beatstep Pro, which is really frustrating though. I have to say that the Beatstep Pro, it would be so much better if the probability could be applied to individual drum voices, because like once it starts, because it's really cool having all that probability coming in, just a single sort of just 16-step loop going round and round and round, building in the probability.
Doesn't it? Haven't they just released a firmware update that does something? Did I not see that as one of the bullet points, like literally last week?
There is a firmware update. Unless I missed that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to check that out.
Check that out.
Perhaps the chat room can do a bit of research while we do a show.
You did a Digitakt.
The workaround for it that I do though is that you can use the one of the other sequencers going out the same MIDI channel, and I maybe sort of do the kick drum pattern or something in the other sequencer. So because it's when the kick drum starts jumping around because of the probability, it can really throw the groove off.
You need it per
like
voice.
steady.
You don't say.
Groove Graveyard.
Groove Graveyard. I'm making notes of all of these things.
Oh, that's a good one.
Groove Graveyard. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't click on that?
But I think just to finish off, what's been nice with the Retroverb, it's sort of just kind of making the Retroverb like kind of part of the Beatstep Pro, part of the DRM. It feels very organically linked, and it just
semi-modular.
Nice.
It is really, yeah.
I'm going to jump in with some stuff that I've got here. First of all, I've got this, which is at Music Messer. We discovered that we didn't have enough light, so this is. Now check this out. This is a awesome tiny little light that will sit on top of the camera. I don't think it's even at full brightness, so I think I can turn it up. There we go. Look.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
I like that. So that arrived today. Hold on, can I turn it down? Because I'm not going to be able to see anything and no interface to be able to actually run the show anymore because I've blinded myself with it. And also, I don't know if you can see back there, there's a really massive curved monitor that Samsung got in touch with us and said, we're releasing a new curved monitor. Would you like to be the first to review it? I can't tell you what it is or any other specifications, but all other than it is absolutely massive. And I'm going to be looking
curved.
at it. It is curved.
Well curved.
It's
like not just a tiny bit of curve.
Yeah, it is very curved. It's very odd. It's like about this big. It's absolutely enormous.
Oh my God.
Which is great, apart from the fact it gets in way of the speakers.
Monitor.
It gets in way of the speakers. Obviously, that's the problem in near field. But yeah, I'm looking forward to playing with that.
I'd like to see your review.
Yeah, I'll just be like this, kind of behind it, just kind of. So anyway, let's so those are mine. So hey, how about this then? A bit of Moog Subharmonica action. Let's check this out as a topic. This is obviously. This is one of the things that if you're a registered engineer pass at Moogfest, which is running later this year, $1,500. You get to build one of these as well and take one of these away for it. And this is called a subharmonicon, which is based on now. What do I remember? A Trautonium, and essentially 2 oscillators that have got divide down, so you can add multiple tuned divisions to it. Which I quite like the idea of this.
Sounds awesome.
Nice riff.
Beautiful.
It's hard to, it doesn't show you all that much else. There is actually a picture of what it's probably going to look like, which I think is up here. This is on Synth Anatomy. Good friend of ours, Tom Weiss, runs this. We're going to see him in Super Booth next week. No show next week, I should have mentioned. And this is the front panel, so a couple of oscillators with 2 subs per oscillator, which I believe are tunable, or I'm not entirely sure. Yes, I think because there's the mixer there. So you got basically a triad per VCO1 frequency, which looks kind of cool, and that's kind of, as we've seen with the Moog Fest in the past, they release things where it's first built as a DIY build, and then they'll do a kind of limited release, and then you'll get that. And I quite like the look of this because it's not just another subtractive synth that is kind of one of those things that generally is. I know, Rich, have you bought any analog synthesizers recently? Is this something that you kind of something that's just a bit different to what you would normally access? I mean, are you hankering after something a bit?
Is.
Oh, okay.
This certainly is different from what I own. First of all, the last analog synthesizer I bought is the Micro Brute, which is right over there.
Good choice, sir.
It's fun. It's great actually, and a really great voice basis and all that. But aside from that, as relates to this Moog product, yes, it's very unique, and people are releasing a bunch of unique products in this sort of mold where you have a multitude of modularized functions available to you on one panel. And even one of the new Brute products, I think it's their Arturia's new
Mini Brute
series, has something where instead of a keyboard, you have sort of the basis of a sequencer with stepping and such. And it's a really, really cool thing. And then you recently reviewed the Behringer product,
Neutron,
which is sort of a semi-modular type of basis. So this kind of fits into that, in my aged mind, generic category of bringing together various modular concepts and bringing it into one little house and making it cool. And this thing sort of does make it cool. The only really kind of guys I have about it is that just when you thought they couldn't cripple the envelope generators any further, they find a way. And I just don't understand why they don't think envelope generators seem to be very important.
Oh yeah, it's just decay, isn't it?
Modular products. They've got nothing but decay and a switch for attack on this thing. And on the Mother series, they're fairly crippled. They're not fully fleshed ADSR even enveloping. And that's my only question, is why do they seem to be so unconcerned, especially with a product like this where first of all, the demo doesn't seem to reflect the name of the product. I expected this thing to create the base of doom, and I never heard it anywhere.
I'm sure, maybe it can. I mean, this was just an engineering sample, I think.
Well, what is it called? Subharmonium?
Yeah, I suppose you're right.
Damn sure better.
Subharmonica. There wasn't much subharmonics. That's a very good point, Rich.
Nothing.
Trade Descriptions Act.
This is the second, unrelated to Moog, this is the second video in a row I've watched of a product demo where the demo doesn't demonstrate the product in any meaningful way whatsoever. So theoretically, this is going to be a very cool sounding thing, and I'm sure the low end will be absolutely earth shattering. But the point is, if you're going to have all that low end, and assuming it does what we're all hoping it'll do if it's called subharmonium, you'd want some control over the way that occurs in time and, sustain levels and such. And you got nada. You got one decay control and a switch.
I can't see whether there's any envelope via the modular, via the patch point that you might be able to do. I should add, very pleased to see the patch points on the right. I would like this to become a norm, because I don't want all that crap in front of the knobs
these days.
So yeah,
Seems to be these days. And I'll bet it sounds great and it's fun as hell. So don't get me wrong. I don't mean to overemphasize this envelope generator thing. It's just sort of a gripe I've got with them at the moment. And this thing took it one step even further.
One single knob envelope. Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Jamie, you've got a couple of Moogs in the background there. You may have more hidden about the place, secreted on the top shelf of your laboratory / library.
What do I have? I have 2 theremins, actually, weirdly. there.
Don't move too fast. Oh yeah, I see.
And there.
Yeah.
That's really hard to do. So, and I've got a bunch of those Moog figures. Yeah, I love all that. It's I've never actually got down with this sort of new era though. The mother, the mother of a father, or whatever it's called, the drum thing. But they look ace. I mean, I have played with them in the shops. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, one thing that's kind of cool. Me and Christian Vogel, going back to my days with Christian, we got to share the stage with Oscar Sala once, which was quite a treat. Now, Oscar Sala was the Trautonium master, and the Trautonium is a crazy instrument. If anyone hasn't seen the Trautonium in action, there's great footage of it, and that is a true monster of a synth. And he was the one. He worked and did scores for the Birds and stuff like that with Hitchcock. Oscar Sala was the man. So yeah, that was quite impressive to see him. And I got one of those Derpfer made a ribbon strip that's kind of a bit of a Trautonium nod. I've got one of those, and that's lurking in the corner.
Do you find you're reaching for it very often, as with the theremins? Are they a part of your everyday? No, I need a theremin light. No, okay.
No. But one thing, I did plug 2 theremins in once, and they kind of interact weirdly with one another, which is cool. They sort of don't behave nicely if you plug 2 in at the same time.
Oh, so theremin, cool. Theremin interference.
Theremini. What's the plural of theremin? Theremi. So I had some therematic interference. But yeah, I mean, bring it on. These little small boxes are great. I suppose with the modular mindset, envelope generators and such are kind of 2 a penny in the Eurorack dimension.
Or even in software, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's kind of pretty straightforward to do. And as we've seen,
when I'm playing basses, I just want decay. I don't,
maybe so.
As long as sustain is obligatory, then on the Mini, just really. I mean, attack. Yeah, you want attack. But,
yeah, well, you need a little bit just to stop it from going at the beginning. Particularly on some of those.
That's true. That is really annoying. And actually, on the Voyager, you could the envelope on the Voyager. That was always the issue for me with the Voyager. It's just got a really odd amplitude envelope. But then the reissue of the Mini, which is that one, that's so
it's sorted out.
It's crazy.
I don't know, Gaz. You looking for more little discreet, little interesting boxes? Have you got any? I can't imagine you've got any gaps on your little interesting boxes table in the studio anymore. So I'm sure you're probably either going to need a bigger table, a bigger studio, or to rethink your layout.
Well, I mean, what I'm interested in with this, is it exactly the same form factor then as the Mother and the DFAM? Is it the same? Because it looks like, or it looks looks smaller, or is it the same size?
DFAM stand for?
No, drummer from another mother. No, I would say that's narrower than the DFAM.
That seems a bit of a shame. I was just thinking about that, how they Moog seem to be making like a kind of more upmarket kind of Volca range, the way that they kind of work together, and the DFAM and the Mother are really, really good together, aren't they? And as you say, with the patch panel on the right hand side, it just makes a lot of sense. So I was assuming that this would be really cool if it, so that you can imagine the 3 of them stacked together would be, pretty awesome kind of little.
Well, just like that, there was a rack, wasn't there? In fact, in the review, they sent me 3 and the rack, and it was really lovely when you had them. It looks like a kind of a little modular system for a kind of smaller person. Yeah, but you're right.
Yeah, and speaking of which, actually, I noticed, I think it was at NAMM they announced it, but Ultimate Support, the people who make the kind of keyboard stands, they've got a neat little sort of stacking system for sort of desktop units for things like this, I suppose.
I'm just going to have a look for that.
And there's little kind of slidable edges that can kind of like lock the thing into place. I'm pretty sure it's Ultimate Support. Because obviously this sort of desktop format, something which I favor, this is something I talk about quite a bit, not getting drawn into Eurorack and sort of preferring these more standalone modules that you can then kind of connect up. It's definitely the way I like to go about things. So, and then you kind of find the problem of trying to make them all sit nice together.
That's a shocking site, the Ultimate Support site. I'm trying to find.
Is it? I think it was them. I mean,
what do you do for all of your like balancing stuff, Gaz? Like, because you've got so many small machines, how do you sort of get them like ergonomically to sit? That's quite a big deal, really. Just whop them on a table.
Yeah,
you've got some good angles.
Well, I mean, these things are brilliant.
And IKEA is your friend. Yes, here we go.
Oh, you got it out there.
Are you kidding?
£1.50. They're £1.50 each, and they're just about the right size. So things like Erebus and different things
perfect.
like that.
So cool.
And they do a bigger one as well, like that's sort of I mean, these are meant for tablets, I suppose, and then they do a bigger one which is meant for kind of laptops, but is really good for the bigger units that you might want to have on desktop. Yeah, I mean, I've got I don't think you can see behind me, but the
not quite. No,
that stuff. Yeah. And also, we've covered them before. There's these. I don't think they do them anymore, but they were like shoe racks again from IKEA. I've got an IKEA quite close to me. So really shoddy stuff, all on the cheap. Really, that's me.
Chipboard based. Well, actually, I did see an interesting documentary about IKEA, and where they were talking to the suppliers, and the suppliers of this sort of pressed stuff. It has to pass these kind of ridiculous moisture tests, where they have to be practically submerged in water for 24 hours before they start to fluff up. So, it's not quite as... Oh, yeah, here we go. There's a bit of a closer look there. There it is.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
It's useful, this stuff.
That bottom piece of wood, it's quite a cool... If you've got an IKEA nearby, there's like a piece. There's like a little area in the car park where they chuck out all of the. It's where all the wood, all like wood bits. You can go and help yourself to it.
Okay, I've got. Here's Gaz got wood.
Gaz cut his beard hanging out in the IKEA car park.
There are so many titles. So far, the titles are standing are. It's cable, not air hair. Spring elf. Improbable improbability, groove graveyard, theremin interference, and Gaz got wood. They're all stellar. And we're only halfway through the show. I'll tell you what, we should probably... has everybody contributed to this topic? Because I should probably do our little iZotope spot, if that works for everybody. Rich, I've come to you, didn't I? You were first. Yes, I think...
Regarding the synthesizer, yes.
What about the standing? Have you got any nifty tips for stands? Do you make your own? Are you that kind of guy, or do you find the just the right thing?
I don't really make my own usually. In this case, but I don't have. I've gotten down to the point where there aren't a lot of doodads laying around that I keep hooked up all the time. So it's not that complicated. In fact, I just sort of disconnected the micro brute. I didn't go far. Okay, it's just right there. But took it off the desk for a minute because I needed the desk for other things. No, I tend to work out of mostly standard configurations unless there's a budget that somebody else is needing.
It's I know.
And even then, it's generally been lately for me in studio design some form of Argosy style desk. There are other companies that make them, and they're all about equal. They're all sort of IKEA-ish ultimately when you get right down to it. But they work. And over here I have something I have deep problems with, which is a Quick Lock X stand, which I sort of hate because I really prefer Z stands. And these days on stage, fortunately, I get Z stands, which is great. So to that extent, I'm driven ergonomically a lot in terms of how the stage keyboards present themselves to me in position and my hand position related to them.
That makes a lot of sense. That reminds me actually of this process, because that as touring musicians, they get to do this. You're about to go on a big tour, you're in production rehearsals. Part of the process, if you've got a decent budget tour, is the guy will come in and design you a special kind of case for your pedals and all of your stuff, and then it arrives and the crew get to know how to put it all together, and then it sort of snaps shut, and so you've got this thing that's your setup for this particular application. And that's something, I don't know how often that happens anymore. I always remember Charlie Jones, the bass player with Goldfrapp, would always get really excited at that point, or he'd come in and go, I've had this made, look at this. Everyone would go, wow. It's kind of like ultimate luggage and technology combined in the same beautiful kind of in the paradigm. It's so we missed that.
Charlie is the epitome of cool. Though he is the.
Oh, yeah.
When I was touring with David Rhodes and Jed Lynch from Peter Gabriel's band, and we were talking about going through like customs and just saying like, oh, you know, have this fantasy about being this international rock star and sort of just swanning into the airport and just like kind of, you know, but the reality is I'm huffing and puffing and taking my belt off and, you know, and just going, God, it's impossible to get through all of this kind of stuff with any dignity or with any sense of cool. And David kind of looks at Jed and goes, unless you're Charlie Jones. Charlie Jones manages to even be
Charlie
stylish
Jones, there he
getting
is.
through kind of, Charlie Jones can get through airport customs with his style intact, you know. So Charlie,
and he's got not only that, he drives a Harley. You know, he's got a Harley, and he's a really nice bloke and a brilliant bass player, and he plays a Perspex
and his
bass.
solo album is immense. If you like kind of talk and sort of kind of Tom Waits, all sorts of stuff, it's immense. It's brilliant. It's really.
Oh,
really
look,
good.
I've got it here. I could play a bit. What is it? Big Hair. Is this
Big
one?
Hair. Oh, that's a track off it. Yeah, it's so cool.
Oh, quite jazzy. Yeah, he produced.
It gets really deep textured.
Oh yeah, no. I should check that out. CharlieJones.net. In fact, he and a friend of mine produced one of the Susie Sue albums together, and I remember really vividly because they said, that they were I can't remember the name of it, and I got invited to a gig, and I went to the gig, and I saw Susie and the band play, and I was talking to Steve Jones because he had to play all of the guitar. Not Steve. I can't remember his name now. Gosh, Steve Evans. Really great guy, one of the most underappreciated kind of musicians, producers I know, and
Richard Evans.
No, Steve Evans. Before the gig, he was just saying, "This is so far from my comfort zone. You have no idea," because he's not a great guitarist, and he had to play all these sort of classic lines with really weird tunings and stuff. And I went backstage afterwards, and I met Susie, and she was fully Susied up, you know, the whole thing, and she was incredible. I mean, she was over 60, and she was doing the full kind of Susie show. And I went back, and it's the only time it's ever happened to me. And they said, "Oh, hi, this is Susie. This is a friend of ours, Nick." And I just went, I just could not string any words together. I was completely starstruck. Anyway, I was going to do an ad, wasn't I? Better do that. iZotope, of course, here we have it. iZotope Neutron 2. It's basically a whole bunch of suite of functions and plugins and features that help you to get the most out of your mix. We've got tonal balance control plugin, which is available in the advanced version. Visual mixer, analog style soft saturation. We've got track assistant, which which basically helps you to kind of get to the sound that you're trying to get to with a lot of AI and kind of learning modes, vintage and modern modes for compressors and EQs. Mix tap plugin, which you can route. This is again in the advanced mode. A new gate with analog style hysteresis. Equalizer, soft saturation mode. I think I mentioned that. Dynamic EQ, which is programmable, which is a very useful thing. Compression, lots of different kinds of compression. Multiband mode, learn function, exciter with emphasis modes, transient shape. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff in this iZotope Neutron. It's well worth checking out. If you go to Neutron, iZotope.com/Neutron, you get the 10-day demo that comes with a lot of their products, and it's well worth looking at. There's also a ton of tutorial stuff on how to get the most out of it, because this is deep post-production and music production tools. So yes, thank you very much for them for sponsoring the show. And of course, we ran a competition last week. You could win a copy of Neutron 2, and the winner we have is, now if I'm pronounced this correctly, Eriko Allegro, whose actually name is Eriko Ishii Conrad, and she's from Japan, and she posted "All hail the lovely iZotope Fairy," because as we know, the iZotope Fairy used to exist in actual true form before she moved on in her job position. We now have another iZotope Fairy, so iZotope Fairy Mark II, who will be able to bestow you at Eriko_Allegro with your copy of Neutron 2. Congratulations, and thank you very much for entering the competition. And we've also got another competition this week, and we're looking for the hashtag Track Assistant and the hashtag Neutron 2 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. Track Assistant is one word, and Neutron 2 is Neutron with 2 on the end. So the hashtag Track Assistant, the hashtag Neutron via Twitter to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. Just send that out there on Twitter, and we'll pick it all up next week and count up the the entries and then do a random number generation, and that's how we win. We get winners on this show. Thank you very much to iZotope for sponsoring the show with the competition prize. Very much appreciated. Golly, right, we've one topic in. Right, I'm going to ask the you lot. What would you like to do next? Well, we should do the Susan. Oh God, hold on a minute.
Susan
Rogers. That's right. Susan Rogers. We'll do that. We'll do that one. Yes, of course. There's the same Rod. No D though. I don't think the Susan Rogers. This was on. Basically, where can I find it? There it is. This was via Loop, Ableton Loop. Susan Rogers came in. She used to. She worked for Prince for 4 years. Also done a whole load of really interesting stuff. I'll play a little bit of this, and there's a quote in here that I just really digged.
Reach the same point, but as very different types of.
If I do that, it'll start playing.
And that taught me another important lesson, that people are not buying sounds. People are buying music. They're not buying what I do as an engineer. What I do is I'm hitching the wagon of technology to the star of this guy's ideas. So the technology is merely facilitating his thinking. Now that can work when the thinking is genius. When the thinking is average, then the sounds have to be extraordinary. And this has been true in the history of music. When new music comes along, whether it's EDM or when punk came along in the 70s, punk sounded like shit. But it was great because the ideas were new. The Ramones didn't spend a lot of time.
Right, it's about an hour long interview, and it's absolutely brilliant. And the whole thing is full of these kind of pearls of wisdom that she has, because she's also now she's a kind of she teaches, I think it's the science or the physics of understanding or listening to music and the sort of neuroscience of it. And really, really interesting individual. And there's a lot of that in there. And Jamie, I'll come to you first, because you actually interviewed her for your podcast, which is, I will plug at this point. This is the podcast.
Thank you.
This is Jamie Liddell Music. This is Hanging Out with Audio Files, episode 12, Susan Rogers, which I just listened to before the show. Very interesting. So, you've had firsthand. I mean, she seems like a kind of very unique individual, and loads of great Prince stories and whatnot.
And so generous with it all, because, of course, I'm a huge Prince fan, and I really had to ask her questions, but I was kind of skirting around the subject for a while, just because I felt, oh man, how many interviews has she done about Prince? How many times has she had to go through all this? But she's just not the kind of person to kind of be curmudgeonly in any way. She's sort of she manages to just be really present, and you'll see it in the talk if you watch the Loop thing as well. That was the experience I had on my show, and if you listen to the podcast, she's just super generous. And yeah, she really does know her stuff. I mean, the Prince stuff. I have started making a claim on the interweb that Susan Rogers was Prince's producer. But even though he said he never had one, I mean, look at the facts. She was with him day in, day out for 4 years. She did all the live stuff. She did the movies. She did all the studio stuff, including Sheila E., including The Time, including all of the auxiliary projects that Prince did. She worked at the rehearsal studio at Sunset Sound. She worked at his house. She was with him literally every day for 4 years, making Parade, Purple Rain, Sign of the Times, and Around the World in a Day. Unquestionably Prince's best work. And then when she left after 4 years of her tour of duty, as she calls it, Prince went on to do Love Sexy, Batman, Diamonds and Pearls. I don't need to explain.
Yeah, well, no, I think that's an opinion that you could certainly argue that. I mean, I don't know that would be the case. I noticed that Rich was perhaps not agreeing with that point of view, but she's whichever way you look at it, Rich. I mean, it's a really interesting individual with some great opinions. Of course. Absolutely fascinating.
I unfortunately didn't have the hour to spend to watch this thing. I had 1 hour to prepare this morning, and then I got to that, and it was like, oh man, I want to watch this, and I haven't seen it, and I haven't seen, unfortunately, Jamie's interview either. So I don't know her, but I think she seems fantastic, and the things she talks about are things that I think about a lot. The things in the excerpts that I've seen, so it's something I'm going to go back to. No, I just don't know that. I don't know if she's the producer or not. To that extent, that's the only thing I was kind of wondering about, because as you know, I've spent a lot of years next to a lot of people, and quite very, very rarely in that time am I the producer, no matter how deeply I may be interacting with the artist on behalf of the producer. So, and when the artist is when the artist is the artist and the producer, then it's one more level of complexity in that relationship. But no doubt she's an incredibly interesting and talented and wonderful person, and I can't wait to get back to this interview and find out just how talented, wonderful, and interesting she is.
Well, she is. I mean, really, really interesting stuff. I mean, a lot of the things that she says in there, you know, I wish I'd written down all the, because I was listening. I thought, that's a great one. That's really interesting. The thing that, you know, she has some very strong ideas about how music is perceived and why it, you know, the psychology of why music works. You know, why does pop music or one pop record or one artist do better than another? She's got some interesting ideas. She doesn't profess to know, you know, that have the magic formula, but she's just full of really interesting observations about that. I know, Gaz, did you get a chance to see any of this? She's a the same, probably similar. It's an hour, isn't it? It's a long time, and I only sent the topics out last night.
Yeah. No, but I mean, you know, also interesting for it to be a female as well, just in that there's not a lot of female producers, sadly, that, you know, so I mean, that's a cool thing.
That's right,
so
producer, Gaz. That's the word. Yeah. No, I'm joking. I'm only winding up about this her being Prince's producer, but I just, I think that it's no coincidence. It's all I'm saying.
Well, it's collaboratively. She
is a soft producer. I understand what you're saying, Rich, but I just
facilitator.
She was literally by his side. We're talking like 20-hour days. If you listen to her talk about the way she worked with Prince, he would wake up and say, "You ready?" The way I asked Susan about this, because I was like, think about Prince's life. He made Purple Rain. He did a world tour. He made a feature movie, and then did the same thing again in 1986. Then he made a double album in 87. You know, the productivity, the sheer output of the man in that time is unfathomable, you know. And she said what would happen was they would do, say in the Purple Rain times, they would go into the rehearsal space. He'd come up with an idea for a song, say, let's go crazy. He'd run it with the band, and then they'll be like, okay, guys, I think we've got the bed tracks. Him and Susan would just stay up, put the vocals down and the overdubs, mix it, and it would be done. They would never look back. We're talking about each track was written, recorded, and performed and everything in a day.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, a lot of it, no, but a lot of it seemed to be almost just sort of hanging on for dear life. You know, she said many times in this, you know, that the recording process was less than ideal in many situations. It's just a question of like whatever came out was, you know, 10 out of 10, and it wasn't a question of, it was just make sure you've got it, even if it wasn't the best. And I guess, Rich, you must find that as well sometimes, that you get a situation where that you've just got to get it, you know. It's like, okay, it's not set up perfect, but something great's happening here. We've just got to have it, you know. There must be occasions when that happens. Yeah,
always cede to the music. Always cede to the music in the creative moment. Or as the best advice I ever got as an engineer, it's put simply, was go out there, listen to them play, move your ear around, find the music, put a mic there. In this case, if you don't have time to move your ear around, go out there and take your best guess and put a mic there. But in the case you're describing. But yeah, I've actually worked next door to Prince for a period of months, and stood outside and listened to them work and all that, and talked to the people who are working on the session about it, and have some actual direct experience with what that workflow is like. And it's nuts. What they did was nuts. The studio's lounge was a campsite of engineers and security guys. And when I say campsite, I mean every single square inch of floor space was covered with somebody's sleeping bag.
Wow.
Because he would call a session for 11 o'clock in the morning. At 7 that night, he would call and say, I'll be there in 2 hours. He'd show up at midnight. He'd work for 3 hours, say, I'll be right back, leave, be gone for about 8 hours, come back, ready to work. He'd work 24 hours straight. So those people basically lived on the floor of the studio lounge for a period of however long it took to make this record. It was called the Gold Experience, ultimately, when it came out. And at the same time, he was having his most beautiful girl in the world competition. which I don't quite know how you do that, but he did it. And every single day, this parade of some of the most stunningly dressed female people you've ever seen in your entire life would be marching into the studio on a steady basis to interview for whatever this position was that is the most beautiful girl in the world that he had in mind. So there was that, and he walked out once when I was standing out there, and he took one look at me, who he didn't know, looked around for security people, and was like, "What the hell am I doing out here?" He was clearly uncomfortable with the fact that anybody was in the hallway that he wasn't familiar with personally.
Yeah, well, there's lots of insight in that. It's well worth checking out the Loop piece, because she talks about his, he's very shy, and just those are the sort of choices he made. But it's really interesting to hear somebody talk not just about Prince, but so articulately about the creative process and about the perception of music. And I just thought, if you're involved in any, I think almost in any creative process, it's well worth an hour of your time if you've got it to spare. Absolutely brilliant.
Also, I want to just add that he played with us at the Superdome. He came out with Chic and performed with us for one song, for part of
nice.
It. So we have that interaction as well. And he's been to our show. He's been to a few of our shows in various places. And
cool.
We miss him. It's very sad. I think it's 2 years now or something, and we miss him. And it's very sad.
It is, yeah. It's a very sad, because I mean, somebody with that, yeah. Anyway, one of my great regrets is I never got to see him live, and I've told the story before. The closest I ever got to him was when I was involved in pop music. We went to Paris, and we were being driven around to various interviews and stuff. The driver, Guillaume, was Prince's driver before us. So massive demotion for him. So, the two complete idiots sitting in the back of a car, but he told us loads of stories, and it was just, that's about as close as I've got to. I don't know if I've said it was the same car. Probably not. I expect he got the
I got to meet him once. I got to meet him with Quincy Jones at the Montreux Jazz Festival, just before I was about to go on stage. And unfortunately, it was not a great experience. I was having a Susie Sue moment of my own. Doing various involuntary motions with my mouth and body, because and then that just led, and then Prince at the same time wouldn't make any eye contact with me, and it was a bloody awkward interchange, and he slightly dissed my outfit, and then I had to go on stage, crushed by my idol. But I subsequently looking back at that experience, I think it's the way it should have been. Because imagine if you'd just been normal and be like, all right, mate, have a good show tonight, like your music, off you go. I just would obviously wouldn't be sort of slightly English, but just, I think
that would be weird if it'd been slightly Cockney.
He's like, all right, mate, I mean, Stevie does that though, doesn't he? You've seen Stevie do the carpool karaoke. That is a must watch. If you haven't seen that, that's bloody ace.
No, I haven't.
He starts to do all his English accent. He's having a laugh with James Corden or whatever. That is bloody awesome. But Prince is you're absolutely right, Rich. We miss him. We lost a real unique monster musician. My friend Justin Stanley had the experience of working with Prince and worked on the whole record with him, and then got called, same thing. Oh yeah, Prince is going to come and do vocals. Like, okay, cool, And then he arrived next day to work, and then he said, "Oh no, Prince isn't coming. He was up late working." He goes, "Oh, he did that vocal." And he goes, "No, he did all the vocals, all 13 songs, including the backing vocals last night." Whoa. He just stayed in the studio and did 13 lead vocals and all the backing vocals in one night. I mean, that's the kind of madman that he was. So, yeah, it puts us all to shame, doesn't it? There's a bit like that in the Susan Rogers thing in the Loop. It's like, you work with Prince and you get spoiled, and then you're in with a band who's spending a day doing a guitar solo, and you're like, what is going on? These guys, they got a record deal.
What did you say? Manage your disappointment. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's okay, right. Well, I'm glad we covered that one, because she is. It's well worth watching. So I'm thinking,
really
what's next? What's next? I'm just trying to look for. Anybody have another topic that they want to grab out of this? Let's. Oh well, I suppose we should. Where is it? I've got it somewhere here. No. Oh yeah, the Ambi-Verb. Did you see that? I think I can't download a video for that.
That looks good. That looks great.
This is the Ambi-Verb HD, Noisemakers Ambi-Verb HD, which is an ambisonic reverb which this demo is just showing raindrops, and they're putting it in various halls. And I'm listening on headphones.
There's a lady singing.
Wow. Okay, yeah. Let's see if I can.
It kind of goes around, it spins around your head, kind of. It comes close. She's like in your ear for a minute, and then she goes off.
Oh wow, that is weird.
Good demo too. Beautiful song.
Oh my.
Isn't that amazing? That's
yeah,
so
I didn't listen to that on headphones the first time round, and actually now it was kind of, it felt like that was happening. And obviously I'm only listening into 2 channels, so it's the wet and the dry part of it plays a lot in there. But yeah, this is the Ambisonic oh gosh, it's called Ambi-Verb HD, 30 Ambisonic room impulses, large and small churches. It's at €99, I believe. 30 sonic, dry, wet control, decay, all sorts of. Yeah, it seems like it. I know. I know. Mark Tinley's a big fan of kind of surround and ambisonic stuff, and I guess it gets used a lot in film production and sort of spot effects and things where you have to get much more spatially kind of clued up on that. Gaz, do you find it? Do you think it's got any use in music production as well for that kind of, or is there not room for that amount of information in today's mixes?
Well, ambisonics now with like virtual reality, ambisonics is becoming the standard now, isn't it? For
like game stuff and sound
the
effects,
process. Yeah, and well, the whole gamut of virtual reality. So, which is really cool. Now, Underworld did a concert at Glastonbury quite a long time in an ambisonics rig. I didn't see it sadly, but I mean, I heard Carl told me all about it, and that sounded really fun. I think there's 8 speakers there, and but I mean, it's definitely worth listening to the demo with headphones on. It really is. It really is
awesome.
An amazing. Yeah, it does sound really good. So, does it have any use for music? Of course, definitely. I mean, it certainly sounds really good with that singing, for instance, is a great example. Just really giving a peculiar immersion into the sound.
Yeah, no, I did notice that for the first time. Rather.
Yeah. So, however, I mean, there is this thing, isn't there, about kind of how listening habits are. Well, so many people listen on mono rigs, don't they? Now, be it sort of things like the Amazon Echo or the Apple.
Yeah,
HomePod,
well, that's true.
You know,
is it compatible? Yeah.
Currently, no way of doing stereo with a HomePod. I mean, when AirPlay 2 comes out, that will improve matters there a little bit. But at the same time, what I'm saying is, though, I mean, when we're talking about music, I mean, yes, listening with headphones.
What's the flipping point? Yeah,
just tripping out on the underground, going bloody hell. You just be like, it's a lot of people listening on headphones. Loads.
Oh, well, I mean, there is. There absolutely is.
This is
but
great,
I mean,
and plus, I think in mono it'd still be like, a good like Alti-Verb kind of thing. I plumped for Alti-Verb recently, and it's like still loads of money. And I was sort of like at the back of my mind going, I could just use Max for Live Convolution Reverb. Will I care? And ultimately, I think I probably would have been happy just to have done that. So this seems like a good price, and like it gives you more in a way than something like Alti-Verb in some ways.
Yeah, well, but Alti-Verb has got a lot more stuff. I know, Rich, convolution reverbs. I mean, A, convolution reverbs, and B, ambisonic kind of approach to reverbs. Is there sort of a place for that in what you do generally?
Sure, absolutely. However, right now, I'm not as involved in convolution reverbs as I was some years ago at the appearance of Alti-Verb, perhaps. They're wonderful and they sound great, and I like Alti-Verb a lot, and this thing actually sounded really good in the demo. And the price point is amazing and kind of consistent with the post Waves garage sale sort of new pricing scheme that everybody's having to adhere to in order to compete, which is basically dropping your prices like 80%. From whatever you thought you were getting before, which is sort of what's happened to everybody. So for 100, whatever it is, euros, pounds, dollars, this thing is a lot of reverb. I didn't hear it in headphones. So the thing about the voice going behind my head didn't translate as well for me interestingly, as it has in the past when I use something like Mondo Mod, which is a Waves product. But I would listen to it on headphones and reconfirm.
Yeah, no, well worth checking out. What I thought was kind of interesting as well was the very close stuff at the beginning where the raindrops, and then you got this kind of incredibly realistic, very tight, small room stuff. And that's often, I mean, I'm more of the guy who would sort of just put loads of reverb on everything that lasts for ages to cover it, smudge all of the sort of nonsense that I'll noodle into, rather than these very specific spaces with specific spacing. I can see that being really useful for maybe a small beat combo, that you hadn't tracked together in the same room and you wanted to kind of create the sense of a space in that they recorded in. I think that could work really nicely.
Did you guys ever watch Mix with the Masters ever, that series?
No, I'm not sure if I have.
It's really worth watching. And yeah, it's great. They've got all kinds of, of the best. Like Chad Blake is a great one to watch his whole process, and he'll run you through basically, his digital setup, which is, you can learn an awful lot from just to see, because I think he's one of the masters of the in the box process, really, isn't he? He kind of really did kind of manage to get great sound purely in the box. I think probably before anyone else.
Chad Blake.
Yeah, and I was just thinking one of the interesting ones was Adele running through the making of Rolling in the Deep with Paul Epworth, who's another guest on my show, blatant plugs. But I love working with Paul, and one of the things he did on that record was to use the Neumann head, which was used an awful lot as well in the making of Perfume Genius and a lot of the stuff with Sean Everett, another guest, Blake Mills, another guest, who have used this head in a sense to give, like what you're talking about, Nick, when they were doing Rolling in the Deep, they used the head to sort of give, so they kept the head in the same place, perhaps a bit like Bruce Swedeen when he was working with Michael. He did some kind of thing a bit like this. You keep one mic in the same spot and position the instruments around the mic. And so when you, basically, if you're going to multi-track all the instruments separately, you can kind of preserve a sense of actual relative space in the room if you keep the ambient mic. In this case, the binaural head has a lot more information than just putting up a stereo pair, for example. Well, not more information, but different kind of information. So that's a really nice sort of way, a bit like you were talking about, sort of tying in disparate elements in a way using something
like a sort of
spatial.
Ambient glue. That's an interesting idea.
It really works really well in the example when you watch the making of Rolling in the Deep. It's particularly impressive just how much that Neumann head is doing. It really, really does make it come together. It's genius, actually.
Interesting.
It's sort of like a massive learning experience for me to see. And I've bought these lavalier mics. I'm using a Sanken lavalier mic for this, and I bought them for my podcast, and I hate them. I really don't like the sound of lav mics. But someone told me recently, if you clip two lav mics onto either side of your glasses, then you've got like a binaural recording setup.
Yeah, well, so are they Omni? Are they Omnis, the Sankens?
They are Omni, yeah.
They do sound, the Sankens are really good quality mics. They're definitely... Yeah. There were a couple of things. In fact, I'm sure we saw 3DIO. They make ears. They're like these... We saw them at NAMM, didn't we? Was it with you, Gaz?
I don't know. I did the feature on it,
Yeah, that's right. They're really interesting.
How are they?
I don't know. I haven't worn them, but they just look really funky. Rich, have you used binaural heads? Because they're all, I don't know if there are a lot of them around, but they look like crash test dummies, don't they? With a couple, but they've got microphones in the ears. Have you had the opportunity to use them in the past?
Have I had the opportunity to use them? Yes, absolutely. Have I actually used them for anything that I was doing? No, but I've come close. I've listened to them for certain things, and I could see using them, and it's interested me since forever that I first saw a picture of one, and it looked like, I think it was even before we knew what a crash test dummy looked like when I first saw one of these things, because Neumann, Sennheiser, a bunch of people, especially the German school, were making these things a long time ago. Sheps, there you go. So yes, I've had the opportunity. Have I actually used it as part of my recording process? Not really. But I know Tinley, for example, will walk around the world with microphones taped to his ears just because, because he's that guy. So people
and
do.
A great use of
Yeah, actually you can get binaural, you could get earbuds that have
I got some
microphones
here
in them as well that work in the same way.
Yeah.
Rich, you sounded like you were about to finish that point. Sorry.
No, I'm good.
Sorry,
good.
Thank you.
Have you got some
example of the binaural head? You leave it in the room, right? This is a classic use of it. If you're doing, and it happens a lot in modern studio techniques, like you've got one singer doing all the BVs, but then you do the thing of like, oh, why don't you move off the mic a little bit off axis and we'll get you a bit further off in the room. That's fine. It gives you something. But with the binaural head, you kind of literally move around the head and then you push those tracks up and something really much more impressive happens. You get like a much more, immersive, picture of all those backing vocals stacked, and it's quite a beautiful thing. It's another thing I saw Paul Epworth do, and it was pretty incredible what it did. So those binaural heads I think people sleep on that technology, and it's awesome in the studio, especially when you're working trying to multi-track layered instruments. Here we
go. Do you want to pick one up?
So expensive.
7,000 euros for this Neumann KU100. Two-stage switchable TV. I kind of want it to maybe have a bit more feature. I'd like maybe a kind of.
Oh
look, there we go.
So you can good.
Close-up ear close-ups.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
We used one on a choir recording years ago, and it gave me this idea what I wanted to get one, and I just thought it'd be brilliant to do it as a really, really super realistic severed human head with like maybe a cabbage inside it, and you set up a big sort of spear in front of the choir and then just bring it in a bucket
just to make them feel at home.
And just grab it by the hair and just chuck it on a spear, and it goes into the cabbage, so it makes a really horrible blood curdling sound like that, and sort of and then and explain, and then the choir has to sing whilst looking, maybe sort of have some fake blood dripping down out of it as well. That's what I've always wanted.
Okay, and it's an interesting production. Would this be a children's choir or perhaps more over 18 type of?
Probably pretty good. I think it'd be good if you were recording a children's choir for a horror film and you wanted just to get a little bit of like tremulous quality in the vocals,
or just screaming children.
Yeah.
You could do another thing where you just have the head on a pendulum and you swing it around. That'd be a sound, cool. Wouldn't it?
Wow,
that's a great idea.
Hit someone.
There was a point at which there was a discussion about the making of a Rush album in which they were going to put microphones on Neil Peart's ears and hang a PZM microphone around his neck and record that as he progressed through his drumming on a kit. Now, how you do that, I don't know. But I do remember seeing a discussion of that at one time.
I wonder if whether a head would work well for drum kits. I suppose, particularly if it's where the drummer's head is. I don't know, because it's a very different sound, isn't it? When you're that.
Bad Blade did it all the time.
Oh really?
Oh yeah, yeah. That, and the he's there all the time on drums. That's like a big part of catching the whole sound of the kit. Is it like you were talking about earlier, Rich? You put your ear in the place, hear the sound. Yeah. I mean, this is a literal way to put the ear in place.
I wonder. Okay, here's a concept for you. So you get the new Neumann head or other brand, but you buy the ears of Bob Clearmountain or the ears of Jamie Liddell or Gaz Williams, and that they in the same way that you can get your in-ear monitors molded, you could get your outer ear modeled and then placed on the side of the head to give you the sound that Rich would hear or whatever.
That is so cool.
I wonder if that's possible.
I love it. Elephant ears.
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you my idea for a little stocking filler, like called top end, little thing that you wear and it just pushes your ears forward a little bit. That's all it does. And I call top enders.
I love it, man.
It's like amazing the top end you get by just simply bringing your ears forward. Just a little thing around the back with just two little soft pads on them.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Susan Rogers will be in here
because it's amazing. Like, suddenly, my top end expands by significant amounts. I mean, but,
sure, you need them sort of like on
a little bit, just a little bit.
Just have little ones that can kind of. I could do with ones going the other way. Actually,
go the other way.
Yeah, that would be good because then I'd have sort of. I don't know. I don't think I could get used to the way my profile looked, but. Just maybe a couple of mils, motorized sort of. It's like boob tape for ears.
I can't get over when I'm doing a mix. I can't get over what a difference it makes. But literally, just tiny amount, just pulling my ears forward a little bit. The top end completely changes. So
if we're really dedicated, what we should do is chop our ear off, completely.
Oh boy!
And then just get the replacement latex ones you're talking about, so you could just
Oh,
pop
of
on
other
a
people's ears.
pair of Bob Clear mountings, then check it with a pair of. Do you know what I mean? Just that's the
swappable. You can
ultimate
swap 'em,
dedication to engineering. I wanted to take my engineering to the next.
You can have
Amazing.
you could have these kind of like headphones that are like, you know, you're wearing headphones, two of you are wearing headphones that just have the ears part of it on there, and they just kind of clamp on, and you get interesting idea. I think we come up with a product there.
We're onto something.
Well,
Rich, you ready?
The Van Gogh.
there is the psychoacoustic aspect where your brain becomes accustomed to what your ears are presenting and provides all the compensation you need to hear something properly in stereo until the ears are really damaged badly.
Right, that's when you ears though, Rich.
much.
You switch them
But I
on to
suppose if
another
you
pair.
changed your ears, then you would hear the mix in a new end. You'd retrain your brain to hear it in a different way. So it's like switching monitors.
Not tomorrow morning, you wouldn't.
I actually think we might be onto something.
Okay.
Well, anyway,
We heard it here, folks. If we
never
can
know.
make an Ableton Live rack instrument, so it doesn't involve actually any software development or any hardware development that did this, then yeah, maybe I can get we could get something built to join our other instruments there. Anyway,
Nick.
it's been a lot of fun.
Can I just jump in quickly? There's a couple of music technology news pieces that I think we should mention.
Oh,
the
what, that?
Dreadbox Erebus, the Dreadbox Erebus kit.
Yeah, I've got it. There it is, the little Erebus
Yeah.
kit, 158 to 200 euros. You can have the.
cheaper than Moog, isn't it?
Let's
It's a
see.
beautiful synth. I'm absolutely so deeply in love with mine.
Oh,
Would you make
sweet.
one, Dad? Would you be up for building one?
No, I would if I could.
God, look at that with a
Is that all it
Tenori
is,
on as well.
DIY?
I do like the Erebus.
What
Yes.
a glorious! Oh, it's glorious.
that's-
Oh, look, it looks
So-
like. Hold on, let's have a look. What is it? Right, so it is very, very componenty.
Oh,
Before
I like the way
they
it's
didn't
done.
show the actual, they didn't show the
Yeah.
actual construction bit.
If it's just that
That's right.
bit,
Yeah, great.
It's like boil in the
200
bag.
Yeah, excellent. Vesta
TV
Dreadbox.
synth and it.
Oh, there's too many titles here. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stick with one of them. Folks, it's been great. Yeah, was there another story you wanted to get in there?
yeah,
go on, Gav.
Digitakt 1.08 update
Oh,
for the
hold on.
Digitakt Electron
Oh,
Digitakt.
it's got a compressor in it.
It's got a
has it?
compressor, like a master bus compressor.
Interesting.
And I'm wondering how similar that will be to the compressor in the Analog Rhythm Mark II, although I think that's a analog compressor, but
1.08.
Hey guys, have you got a
1.08.
Digitakt?
It's
You need a
not-
Digitakt. Then you can get all that crazy randomness you want.
I love
Yeah.
it. I borrowed the one from Sonic, and I loved it. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
It's
I
good,
do
isn't it?
want one.
It's great.
Really good.
now you can back up the samples. It actually makes it
Yes,
something
you can.
could use as a professional, which is awesome. So, right. And, next week,
Thanks,
no
guys.
show. Next
That's
week,
so fun.
next week,
No
no
shirt.
show. No show because we are at Super Booth, so we'll have a whole lot. There's a ton of stuff coming from Super Booth. There will be a lot of releases and a lot of stuff. So yeah, stay tuned for that. You can find that. Just come onto the site and it'll be trailed everywhere. We do a live blog. We do all of that normal stuff. So subscribe to the YouTube thing. And Gaz, you're going to be there as well, right?
If all things go to plan, yes, that's my plan. So
you will
yeah.
enjoy that.
Can I just say one thing quickly about? So someone's mentioned something about the Erebus, saying that like $800 could build a 4-voice Erebus, because they do that thing where you
Paraphonic,
do
yeah.
the
Now then,
yeah.
That's an interesting idea.
awesome idea.
Try, yeah, it wouldn't be a lot of fun
$1,500.
tuning those oscillators, but yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
fair dues. Right. Probably should stop now because it's getting to that point in the day when it's the end. Jamie Liddell, thank you very much for joining us. And I thoroughly recommend that you head over to jamieliddellmusic.com and check out the podcast, which is Hanging with Audio Files, and especially the Susan Rogers. But there's so many other great ones there as well, as he mentioned.
man.
You know, really do
Appreciate
check that
it.
out. So please do.
Yeah.
Also, Mr. Rich Hilton, thank you very much for joining us, for coming back from across the globe back to what I feel is one of your many homes, at least as far as I'm concerned. So thank you for joining us as well, Rich. It's a pleasure to have you. Where are you off next?
Next, I believe, is going to be a private show in the States. And then in June, couple of shows in the States, including the Bonnaroo Festival, and then from June, July, and August, it's going to be all over the UK, Ireland, and Europe. So
excellent. Well, I hope we can meet up this time. That would be really good.
Me too. I'm probably somewhere within ball throwing distance of your town because I'm playing, it seems, everywhere.
Excellent.
I look forward to that. Aren't you?
Yeah, man.
Are you playing Bristol?
Yeah, we're playing. We are playing in Bristol.
Oh,
yes.
definitely.
Do you know what that's
August,
called?
I think.
Do you know what it's called? That is it. Loves. Do you know what
the
that
Bristol one
is called? Yeah.
Is it the festival?
One.
Is it the Love Festival or something?
Oh, I'm sorry. I may be mistaken about Bristol. I was confusing my English cities, and I thought Brighton because I think Steve lives in Brighton, doesn't he, or near Brighton?
He does. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have any specific information about being close to Bristol. I am, however, going to be close to Charlbury, where our good friend is close to Ty.
Well, that's pretty close to us as well. All right, cool.
Yeah, I realize. So there's that, and I don't know where some of these things are. I don't know where Lytham is, and I'm going to be in Henley, which is apparently near Dave.
Yeah, very near Dave.
Very near Dave. Yeah.
All right, brilliant. Well, we'll hook that up. But Rich, thank you very much for joining us. Absolute pleasure to have you as ever. And also, Mr. Gaz Williams, thank you for joining us as well. You'll be hopefully seeing. You might see him in front of a camera at Super Booth. If he's playing a gig, we'll probably film him talking about his setup and doing crazy stuff on stage, no doubt. So that's it for this week. Oh, sorry, go.
No, I was just going to say, I just had some possibly brilliant news today about a new job, which I'm like, so hopefully I'll be able to disclose what that is soon, if that comes off, which involves MIDI bass as well.
Excellent. Well, best say no more in case, don't want to. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody. That was Sonic Talk, episode 531. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody in the chat rooms, the YouTube chat room, and the other chat room, and also to iZotope for the competition. Don't forget, if you want to join the competition, what you need to do, look for the hashtag Track Assistant and the hashtag Neutron2 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. to win a chance. Well, that's it for this time. Thank you very much. We'll see you all next time. Take it easy. Bye.
Yes.